Our Brian Protiva, our final speaker this morning, will provide another insight into the topic of network transformation. Brian co-founded ADVA Optical Networking in 1994, and as one of the two managing directors, he focused on creating ADVA Optical Networking's marketing, sales, and growth strategy. In 2001, Brian was appointed CEO and set in motion the strategies that fuel the company's success today. Under his leadership, ADVA Optical Networking advanced to become the global market leader in Ethernet access devices and one of the top players in Ethernet Metro WDM worldwide. To date, ADVA Optical Networking innovative optical Ethernet solutions have been deployed in more than 10,000 enterprises and in more than 250 carrier networks. In 2011, revenue reached over $500 million and employing over 1,300 employees. Before coming to ADVA Optical Networking, Protiva was managing director at AMS Technologies, now the Igora Group, which he joined in 1987, where he focused on co-managing its subsidiaries. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Stanford University. His presentation will highlight key opportunities and challenges that arise when building a multi-layer, programmable infrastructure as solutions for carriers, ISPs, and enterprise users, including next-generation backhaul, LTE, and LTE advanced networks. His talk is titled, Capitalizing on Network Transformation in the Age of Programmable Multi-Layer Infrastructure, and in short, network transformation. So please join me in welcoming Brian Protiva.
Thank you very much. So, it is a great honor to be here. And clearly, I was given this opportunity to address you. I wasn't handcuffed. I wasn't coerced into being here. It wasn't my childhood dream to get up in front of a big audience and give presentations. But having been given this opportunity from the Optical Fiber Conference, that it was an excellent time to share our vision and our opportunities as a medium-sized, high-growth, and dynamic company in the transport layer. I was told by the committee that the reason that ADVA was selected, or that we got this opportunity, was because we were different. We use optical networking technologies in order to drive and address different applications. Some of those that were named were mobile backhauling and also data center connectivity. So I love technology, and I've been in business for over 25 years in both business management and sales roles. Having said that, as indicated, I did study electrical engineering at Stanford. I'm a CEO of an optical networking company, and I've been that for many years. In fact, I'm probably the longest standing CEO in the industry. So I'm not sure if that makes me numb or makes me something that rhymes with that. So, I was born in the Silicon Valley, and I co-founded ADVA in 1994 and funded it through our family-run business, a reseller business in Europe. So where did we get started? In East Germany, in a building built for Robotron. It was the East Block's vision and company that was supposed to compete with Seagate. Bottom line is, this is no different than a garage or university lab or your home. You start up a business and you can persevere. You have a good idea. You have highly committed employees. You can succeed. But today is not about just do it. because too many of us are just doing it. You'll see in the structural part of our industry and the changes that we can drive that there's too many companies doing it, and we need to do more together as a community. This is our award-winning building and mining in today. I'd like to think that Cisco would have bought us for billions of dollars had we had this in 1999 or 2000. We were their OEM partner back in 2000, selling our equipment into their data center connectivity applications. So why are you all here today? Clearly, you're not the chain gang. You're here because I imagine that you have a passion for our technology. And networking is at the center of our world. And optical networking is at the foundation of that network. But maybe you're also here because you got on the data optical highway. You didn't find the right exit. WAN optimization, or routing, or switching. Or maybe you were here because of the opportunity that you felt that optical networking gives you. So, where do we want to be? We want to be in an industry that is hot, growing, challenging, and simmering with career development opportunities. Is optical networking a place to be in 2013? What happened to the optical reboot of 2011? Do we have our mojo? Does our industry have our mojo? So that was the intro, and we're now moving to our industry. We will cover the past, the present, our customers, and then focus on a little bit of the future and the opportunities and potential for transformation. Again, both from a technology perspective as well as from an industry perspective. So what was our framework in the 90s? We had millions of users. We had tens of thousands of applications. It was the PC era with LANs and client-server architectures. The internet was on a roll. And we as an industry probably had over 50,000 optical engineers. It was a strong and growing community. What was in our toolbox at that point? Some basic components and systems, 2.5 and 10 gig SDH SONET systems, point-to-point WDM architectures, 1632 channels. And who were the innovators in the 90s? We had Nortel as a leader in the TDM piece, OC192, and already setting the framework for some of their 40 gig work. We had Ciena as the startup in the mid-90s, who was supplying long-haul 16 times 2.5 gig WDM channel systems. And we had ADVA offering in the mid-90s a 4 by CWDM solution for SGON, multiplexing for mainframe connectivity. So what happened to our fantasy world at that time? The bubble began to inflate, and ADVA actually became worth more than Lufthansa. I was sitting in the back of the plane, though. I should have known something was wrong. I should have actually probably bought that plane, a real economy asset. So the industry had a dream, and networking was at the center of the world, and we were the foundation of that network. But what happened in the new millennium? Well, the boom times came to an end. It was the nightmare of 2001 and 2002, and a lot of great names disappeared. Let's take a look at the class of 1997 and 1999. And did they graduate? Probably $2 billion was invested in this group of companies. And only one of them, Xterra, is still around today, performing business and one of the smaller suppliers in our industry. All the others either were shut down or acquired and indirectly shut down. So things started to recover in 2003 and 2004. System vendors, startups that survived had found enough business and enough revenues to generate the ability to survive, and or people had raised enough money. And at that point, something happened which few had predicted. The China Inc. and two national icons decided that they were going to go global. They started to compete. They were able to meet the industry standards and specs and requirements of our carrier base at a quality that was acceptable. So it basically changed our industry radically, taking up to 35% of the global opportunity in a few years. So with that, only 25 companies of the original 100 were able to survive and continue to be part of our industry. Why was it that our industry actually supported 25 players? Why was it that it wasn't in the higher layers? Why did only 2 companies survive in the routing layer of the telco space during that period of time? So that's the past, and now we're going to move to the present, 2013. So we're trying to put a happy face on something that's not so pretty off to the right, or are things starting to look up in 2013? Is our optical networking space growing fast enough to support our industry? What is in our toolbox? We have more integrated components, tunables, pluggables, switching fabrics, and we have different systems. We have multi-haul solutions that go from the access to the core, enterprise to the ultra-long haul. We have 96-channel systems and FlexGrid ROADMs. The flexibility is, however, not being used for reconfigurable networks today. It's being used mostly for logistics reasons from our customers. Why is it that our customers are not using highly dynamic mesh networks in the optical layer? Why is it that they continue to install point-to-point long-haul links and ring-based metro solutions? 100 gig is table stakes today, and the first true movers to multi-layer solutions with MPLS to optical are being explored and implemented by some carriers. One option and one offering is the Juniper and ADVA offering. In addition, over the last years, many functions moved into the optical layer. Encryption, packet switching, and sophisticated restoration schemes. So that's the framework, and we have a rich toolbox, but what's happening in our world? Bandwidth is growing quite quickly. You have Google driving bandwidth with search, with YouTube. You have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Microsoft, you have Apple, and various other content service providers driving more bandwidth day by day. You have users from 2 to 100 in age that are doing everything, educating themselves, entertaining themselves, buying, purchasing products. So the framework is there for bandwidth to grow over the next decades. But we have a macroeconomic environment which is quite tough. We had a debt crisis 6 years ago, and we have more debt today than we did 6 years ago, even in Germany. If you look at Germany, at 60% or so debt, and 5 years ago has over 80%. So government debt is higher. Private and commercial debt is also higher, on a whole and on the globe. So is that going to change? Is the financial or the macroeconomic environment going to change? The one positive point is that the telecommunication industry is growing. 2.5% of total GDP spending in 1990 was the telecommunication space. And in 2012, 2.8% of the GDP is being spent on the telecommunications space. So what is coming our way? A different framework. Today, we have billions of users, trillions of things, and millions of applications. So billions of users moving to trillions of things. Smart metering, devices, machine-to-machine communication. And the framework, therefore, is also set up to support that bandwidth growth. At the same time, we have a number of growth drivers in our industry. In 2013, multiple growth drivers. But I name and address 4 specifically. So mobility. You and I accessing the cloud, our friends and the world anytime, any place. The challenge for the service provider is to deliver profitable mobile broadband services. What is the opportunity for our community? Drive fiber to the very edge, to those antennas, and mobile backhauling solutions and also adding applications on top, such as sync and timing and caching. Growth driver number 2, video. Video has been driving bandwidth for the last 10 years, and it will drive bandwidth for the coming decade. How do we as an industry add value? End-to-end fiber. Specifically, scalable and sustainable, energy-efficient, residential broadband solutions, the FFTX opportunity. The third major driver is the enterprise cloud. And there are many people that believe that actually that graph does not really demonstrate the amount of growth we're going to have. 70% of CIOs will embrace the cloud-first strategy by 2016. Those CIOs, coupled with the CFOs of their companies, will move to a zero-capital IT plan based on the inability to be able to scale their IT personnel departments and the cost of software frameworks. The challenge for our industry is to build end-to-end cloud SLAs and enable access to the cloud at low costs, high bandwidth, and with appropriate SLAs. How can our industry add value? SLA-based secure, high-performance access to the cloud, either through carrier Ethernet opportunity and or wavelength services, both areas where ADVA is a global leader. And the fourth and final growth driver is the mega data center, being enabled by cloud applications and global bandwidth flexibility, having fibers prevalent all over the globe. The challenge for our customers is keeping all applications on at all times. How can we add value as an industry? By making the data center secure and reliable, and by building massive pipes between these physical buildings or the data centers themselves, which are often being built all over the world and even up north, where air conditioning costs can be managed effectively. The DC connectivity opportunity is always complemented by other applications like business continuity, disaster recovery, security, and encryption opportunities. So what is the state of our industry at this time? In the upper right quadrants, we have the companies that are differentiating themselves on services, finding new customers, and driving really high profitability. The problem is they're not sharing that profitability with the carriers. So what are the carriers doing? They too want to expand their profitability. They too want to expand their revenues. And so the one area that they can look very quickly is at their supply chain. So over the last decade, they've been managing that supply chain tighter than ever, looking down under the transport companies, access suppliers, and through them to the component players. And that's quite a challenging environment for all of us to survive. 25 companies have been consolidated down to 20 companies from 2008 until 2013. There should be even further consolidation based on this model. So two things have to happen in order to support change. Either there's got to be more sharing the profitability of the right quadrants, the companies in the right quadrants, with the carriers so they can share that with the suppliers. Or we have to drive consolidation in the lower layers of transport systems. The other thing that's happening is that the IP routing companies, who have actually had their profitability drop over the last couple of years, are looking at expanding their opportunity. They're looking at moving into the transport space and or building application hosting devices where they can differentiate their products in the network. And at the same time, the carrier or the transport systems vendors want to go up the stack. They want to build their own multi-layer solution sets. And SDN will actually be an opportunity for the transport players to compete more effectively with IP companies and other network providers going forward. So that's the present. We'll cover quickly the customers. We've talked about the carrier and their challenges. Clearly, they own the network, but they're not benefiting in all the profits that are being generated over that network. There's a lot of pressure from their shareholders, and therefore it is not an easy environment for the carrier either. Karma or drama? Let's talk about the framework of those customers. So there are very much regional differences in the carriers that we see as ADVA. In the emerging markets, we have carriers that are very focused on growth, huge competition, low ARPUs, not much regulatory control, and it's a big opportunity. But my facet is large political suppliers, especially players like Huawei and ZTE, are very successful, and pricing is everything. If you look into Europe, you've got the triangle of pain. You've got low ARPUs, you've got regulatory control that's not focused on innovation, but actually focused on driving price down. Connectivity is a human right. And you have the inability to charge for over-the-top. The Deutsche Telecoms and France Telecoms and British Telecoms are not able to generate or monetize their network as they would like. In that environment, purchasing departments are very strong, and pricing is very aggressive. My facet is there's some successful suppliers, and the business is sticky once in. But to enter the business is quite aggressive, first of all. So what is wrong with growth, and what are the pain points of the carriers? There are a number of pain points. We mentioned some of them already. Regulatory control. Software and Web 2.0 companies, which are driving profits over the network but not sharing them. Low ARPUs. Very inefficient networks with an automated and distributed control layer, which cannot be managed effectively within existing Layer 3 solutions. The complexity of running many generations of networks, overlay networks, and infrastructures in parallel. Mobile backhauling networks not built for LTE Advance, and the TDD push, which is coming. Expensive personnel, which is often unionized. Bandwidth growth and the unlimited data plans, which is slowly changing in some regions. And the single biggest issue is the bandwidth growth that's being predicted by a number of carriers. This one comes from Verizon. A number of people have used these slides in presentations over the last couple of months. And what here they're predicting is 10x growth from 2012 to 2017. So earlier in my presentation, I was talking about 30% annual growth over the last 15 years. This is more like 59% growth. Having said that, in this environment, the reason this is their biggest challenge is because the revenues generated off a gigabit in the network is decreasing at a far faster rate than they're able to drive down the cost of their networks. That's a huge problem for them, and therefore driving them to look for change. That change I'll address in the future piece. So, do enterprise differ from a carrier? Absolutely. If you look at our industry, $500 to $700 million is spent by the enterprise on optical networking. 15, 16, or 17 billion is being driven from the carrier. So it's a quantum difference in the size of the opportunity. There's also only two categories of enterprises that we experience. It's the Western players that are often very much focused on technology and features, and they're the emerging market, or some of the enterprises in the West that are just focused on cost, connectivity at the lowest price. Still not difficult to be able to focus on both segments, and it's even more challenging to be able to focus on the regional differentiations in the carrier space. Before moving to the present, what pain do the enterprises feel? IT costs, which are skyrocketing, personnel costs and the difficulty to scale internal IT teams, security of the information and in general the network, an explosion of data and the appropriate ability to mine that data effectively, and the number of software platforms which are needed to manage the business. So that is a quick view of our customers. Moving to the future. And where do we go from here as an industry? We've got to use technologies to change and transform, but we've also need to make some structural changes going forward. So first of all, by 2020, the ICT industry will be at $5 trillion. That's a $1.7 trillion of growth, a massive opportunity. 80% of the industry's growth will be driven by the cloud and mobility applications. Applications which are here today. So no new structural changes are needed. Growth is coming, guaranteed. Rapid expansion of emerging markets start to dominate our opportunity. I think the people that aren't focused on Brazil, Latin America, Russia, India, and China are going to struggle. The people that can go international, global, and focus on some of those opportunities are going to do quite well. We are in the social networking area supported by the Steve Jobs mobile device vision. NICSAT is basically state-of-the-art software programs allowing applications to be abstracted away from the hardware is something that's going to happen in our industry. Within the context, do we find the dramatic growth in our industry? And what can we do to get our mojo back? So what are our customers looking for? They're looking for a programmable, application-aware network. They're looking to be able to flexibly drive new services. They're looking for full plug-and-play and the ability to virtualize their network resources. And they want to do that with open source, agents and controllers, and open northbound APIs. They want to control their network at their fingertips. What do we have in our toolkits to be able to do that today, and what do we have to still develop? On the component size, I'll go through that over the next couple of slides. On the system size, we really have 4 categories of products. The first one, best-of-breed and fully flexible WDM systems. The second one, optical component-dominated switches and routers. The third area, further integrations, multi-layer network elements. And the final one, software-defined network solutions. How can the component industry help us as the system vendors be able to continue to develop those 4 categories of products? Well, really, they're needed for the multi-rate software-defined transceiver so that through modulation schemes we can drive distance and bandwidth and manage that. Flexible grid ROADMs to drive higher spectral efficiency and flexibility and be able to reuse invested dollars in the infrastructure. High performance amplification, robust amplification, and the control plane, software vendors giving us the frameworks to be able to build control planes and or OpenFlow or other software-defined networking protocols to drive flexibility into the network. What else? Integrated photonics. Clearly, we need to build more integration, more density, more flexibility in our systems. And through silicon photonics and integrated photonic platforms, that will be possible. Other areas that component vendors can focus on are things like active optical cables. It's a $150 million business today and growing rapidly, allowing data centers to use fiber optics and optical connectivity without having optical technicians on staff. Silicon-based polymer and building waveguides for the routing and the switch players to be able to do chip-to-chip connectivity, board-to-board connectivity, device-to-device. And then graphene on polymer for flexibility and other applications. So there are a number of areas that we can innovate so that we can drive and change from static networks to dynamic services. This next slide is pretty much of a standard slide that most networking equipment providers have today. Network is at the center of the world. So basically, the way I view it is that with flexible policy management and being able to virtualize your resources, combined with state-of-the-art databases, and the analytics that are available today, we're going to be able to we'll soon be able to offer applications that really make a difference for their carriers. Bandwidth management are one of them. Cloud bursting is another opportunity. There are a number of applications that are going to transform the optical layer going forward and allow our carriers to optimize and to monetize their networks, their most valuable asset. So transforming the network into a programmable virtualized resource is available today, and almost every supplier is focused on developing a product architecture and offerings in order to support those carriers moving forward. SDN and OpenFlow. Here, there's really three models. Now, I know Nick basically said it's all going direct flat OF model one day. But up until that point, there are a number of different models that will probably have a large influence. And he did say that the other way would be the virtualization of the transport layer, which could be actually driven through an overlay model. But all three of those models are going to be pursued over the next years to come. Our personal view is that packet OF plus static optical, that's something that can be implemented fairly soon. The overlay OF model, where that OpenFlow controller with extensions is going to be able to, through one OpenFlow agent sitting on an optical domain, be able to drive the optical layer and provision services effectively, something that's coming in more like the 1 to 5 year range. And as Nick said, one day, yes, we believe the direct flat OF model, where you'll have a control layer that basically addresses every network element in the network, is going to occur over time. But we do believe that it's a step-by-step process because the analog layer, the optical layer, is quite complex. It's going to take some time before one gets it right. That model is successful. And with all the hype around SDN, people tend to forget green ICT. It's a huge opportunity for our industry. So taking the fiber to the very edge, if you look at the numbers, it's quite astounding how much more energy efficient the lower layers are. If you look at the layer 3 model, there's a huge amount of energy being burned. Our view is, with wireless access power, 10 to 20 times the consumption of a wired solution, and a packet layer that touches each packet at every node at 10x the power consumption of an optical layer, that you should use a wired optical access solution and WDM wherever you can. It makes a huge difference to your network. It's an area that too many people are not spending too much time on. And we've developed some features, like our EcoJack product architecture and features, which we offer to offers as solutions to carriers today. So, where are things going? We have a number of opportunities as an industry: scalable, efficient capacity, service assurance, high energy efficiency, application-aware networks, network optimization, network functions virtualization, and centralized intelligence towards networks apps. The future is wide open, and there are any number of those that you, as an organization, as an engineer, or as a competitor in our space can focus on in order to differentiate your product offering. There's some companies, carry Ethernet players, that just focus on service assurance. There are other people that are very much focused as startups on just the network functions virtualization. So lots of opportunity on the technology level. So what's going to happen out there, and who's going to be successful in the future? So there are many areas for technology innovation. And as a CEO, I personally am fighting with the right balance between innovation, speed, and focusing on continual improvement. What we have seen is that the large companies in our market have not been as successful as those who have focused slowly on technology, have taken risks, and then used technology to better their quality step by step. Incremental steps in an environment with ever shorter cycles to the next innovations basically means that those individuals and companies who can react and implement effectively are going to win the next phase of competition. Big is not beautiful, and it never was. Speed, fluidity, strength, that is the thing of beauty in our world. So within this context, what will stay and what will be a constant? In this world, of unlimited compute power, social fabrics, which are continually changing and giving us new opportunities, and pervasive technology, infiltration of all physical products, the one thing which will stay constant is the networking is at that center. So it is up to us to influence, drive, and benefit from the network being at the center of our universe. So which solutions do we as an industry need to offer? Huge amount of technology change, many opportunities. We want easy to use, multi-layer, highly automated, self-installing, intuitive, market-leading quality, easy to scale, and many other features, all wrapped up in one. In Germany, you call it the egg-laying, milk-producing, woolly pig, or sow, actually. And in our world, in our industry, it's called the God box. And many companies have not been successful or have gone bankrupt because they pursued the God box strategy. So there are many opportunities in our industry, but you should focus as a company and as an engineer. Make sure that you focus in on our opportunities and pursue the right ones. A call to action. So, network transformation, we're all focused on it. We're all investing a huge amount of R&D dollars to drive change. In an industry that has the highest velocity of competition of any industry that I know. Up on that slide, there's 16 or 17 companies of the 20 that are still left in our industry. Further consolidation is likely at some point. Are we being recognized for our work, our energy, and our time? I will answer that question with a resounding no. We are not being recognized. Following the industry technology trends is not enough. Big data and analytics is not going to lead to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Cloud computing will not allow for layer 1 companies to become software companies. Neither will SDN. The speed of an individual channel will not increase our profitability, and increasing the number of WDM channels won't fundamentally change the CapEx investment of our carriers. We are working in an industry which has negative profitability, low growth, and over the last decade, an industry which has invested billions of dollars and all told probably destroyed upwards of 10 billion of real money, 500 billion of paper money. So why have we invested billions as an industry and not made billions in profits? Are we working in a commoditized business? I would say we are not. And the reason I don't think that we're working in a commoditized business is we have a huge opportunities to drive technology, innovation, and opportunity. Point 2, R&D. Look at the spending of some selected publicly listed companies where you could get the access to the information. What you see is percentage of sales spent in R&D is 15 to 30%. That's not a commoditized business. The commoditized business that I know are spending a hell of a lot in R&D, a hell of a lot less in R&D. Bandwidth is growing, and it's growing at 30%. Verizon says closer to 60% over the next period of time, giving us an opportunity for massive growth. And last but not least, the barriers to entry. It costs $100 million to set up a systems business just from the product architecture. It's probably $250 million to build a company that has global customers and is profitable. Somewhat less for the component players, but still, large investments are needed in order to build a competitive offering. To me, that's not a commoditized business. Yet, we're being treated like commodity suppliers. Look at the gross margins. Also, a number of companies in our industries. So remember the R&D was 15 to 30%? What are the gross margins in our industry? 20 to 40%? Every once in a while, people break out to 50%. Sienna's done it a few times. A couple of small companies have gone after higher gross margins at any given point. But what's wrong? Why is our industry structured the way it is? And what are we going to do about it? Look at those share prices over a 2-year period of time. Not very impressive when you look at the returns coming out of the optical networking industry and the system space. So basically, back to the quadrants. There are a few things that are out of our control. We can't control the fact that a lot of the profitability being generated from the network is not being shared with the carriers. And it's maybe good for society and mankind. So that's most likely not going to change from a regulatory perspective. If it did, and more was shared, clearly it would be a different supply chain opportunity for the companies that are supplying those carriers. But that's not going to happen. So what do the transport systems need to do? Clearly, we need to make some changes. And clearly, we also have some opportunities. So, the 5-point plan. One is absolutely pursue SDN. Finding opportunities to drive revenues beyond just selling a hardware solution is important. ADVA, over the last 5 years, has converted our model to about 13% services and software. But we need to drive our business to probably 20, 25, or 30% software in order to continue to increase the margins to an acceptable level. SDN gives us the framework. The optical companies are very SDN-like already. We have a forwarding plane, we have a control plane, we have a management layer, we have a service manager that's all centralized and outside of that forwarding plane. So we're very like SDN. With very few investments, we're going to be able to adapt to that SDN framework. Point 2, multi-layer integration. Clearly, multi-layer integration is a value proposition that's still not being understood by the carriers, or better yet, we don't understand the carrier needs in the multi-layer integration yet, but there seems to be more opportunity month by month. We're running a number of programs with carriers, tier 1s and tier 2s, on the multi-layer integration aspect, and once again, SDN will enable the transport players to be able to drive more value creation up the stack and into our products and offerings going forward. Differentiate and innovate. We have a huge amount of opportunities to differentiate and innovate. I named a few of them in the slides on the future. New market verticals. There are a number of new opportunities coming our way, especially in the enterprise space. You look at utilities, you look at healthcare, you look at government and security. There's more and more money being invested from enterprises into various verticals. And if you as a company can focus it and differentiate yourself, you will have the opportunity to drive a better model. And last but not least, but in fact, last and most importantly, you guys, unless the business managers out there of the transport companies change their ways and understand that we as an industry cannot compete with this velocity of competition and have decent models. Today, I think there's 3, maybe 4 of us that are profitable. ADVA's one of them. We have a 4 to 5% net profit, but there are very few companies that are profitable today. And without consolidating, things will not change. We'll all be spending 15 to 30% of every revenue driving new solutions, but not getting the benefit. So, there's a lot to change to find our mojo. And finally, are we having fun while the pain lasts? So I am not actually very positive, or I don't believe, and in fact, I've met with probably 4 or 5 of the CEOs in the optical space over the next 4 weeks, and I just don't see enough change or enough pain out there to drive that change quickly enough. So I believe we've got to go back to patience. Well, I've been patient, numb, for the better part of 10 years now. So at ADVA, there's only one option, you guys, and that is while we're waiting and being patient, you got to have fun. So there are a number of things that ADVA does within ADVA to make sure that our employees are enjoying themselves. We have very low attrition, under 5%. And one of the things we do is a band contest. Our CTO sets up this band contest each and every year. And lo and behold, when you explore your technologists within your companies, what you will see is that technologists in specific are great musicians. So these are all songs done by bands with all about ADVA, our control planes, our technology, our leadership. We have more than 10 bands in ADVA already, and it's growing. Today we have about 1,450 people, probably 50 or 60 of our employees join this band contest every time. So my theory is, if we have to be patient, let's at least have fun. Thank you very much.